Okay, I want to shift gears now and just talk about some oddball things. I always have a few extra things, that I throw in during the semester just to, fill, not just fill time, but to, demonstrate certain concepts. One of the things I want to demonstrate real fast is basically the idea of how everything works together. It's not just a, we just don't do one thing. For example, say I want to make a little rocket ship here, fly around, and have a trail of smoke. Now I could manually animate that, but I can also use filters to create this trail of smoke. But first things first, okay? I want to start by animating this. Now I could just go position keyframe, but there's another option as well. Under Windows, where's my motion sketch? Here we go. There's a new thing here called motion sketch, and I'm going to close tracker and bring motion sketch up alongside the screen here so we can all see it. Motion sketch is a way of animating things very quickly. By hitting start capture, grabbing my thing, notice my timeline's already starting to move. There we go, just going to go out. And it automatically tracked that. Now if I want to, of course, if I'm happy with that simple animation, I can of course hold down my Alt key and spread those out so they're more even across the timeline. There we go. But the problem with the motion sketch, and one of the reasons I don't show them, is it doesn't do a very good, you can see it's really super jerky and stuff. It doesn't look good. A lot of people grab this immediately, and that's why I waited so long this semester to show it to you, is it's just not that good. Now we can fix that by using yet another tool called Smoother. And Smoother is what it sounds like. By selecting all these keyframes, I can tell it to smooth out that path. So I can go like 25, hit apply, and I now have a much smoother. It's still not great. When I personally do animation, I normally do this manually, hitting position, move, like I showed you. Because the thing is, while this is fast and dirty, it does, using these two tools together does have its problems as well. No, I do not want that to pop up, go away. Yeah. Okay. So I'm now going to hide those two again. Motion sketch. Okay, so say I want to have this rocket ship follow that motion path. Well, I'm going to start by doing a couple other things. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rotate it so it's actually pointing along the path. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the anchor point of the rocket ship. Right now it's dead center inside the rocket ship. And I'm going to use it, wrong one, Eric, there we go, here we go. Position it right there. So you can see that the anchor point is now at the end. So as the rocket ship goes around, it follows the path. Still doesn't look very realistic now, does it? Why is that? Because it's actually, the anchor point's still just traveling along there. It's not rotating or moving the rocket. Well, curiously enough, under Layers, Transform, we have a thing here called Auto Orient, where it automatically makes sure that it's still pointed, in this case, orient along the path. So the object will always, even though the anchor point's at the very tail end, the nose will still follow along there. Whee! Well, welcome back, Genevieve. Anyhow, as you can see, I now have a much smoother situation. So those are the little tools that we can do to make the animation look smoother. But what about wanting to add that smoke I was talking about? Well, we could use a particle effect, or we could use a cousin of the particle effect, which would be under filters, simulation, and there is a thing called CC Mr. Mercury. Mr. Mercury, oops, which I don't actually want to put on the ship because it's going to distort it. What I actually want to do is put in a solid. And since this is, I want it to be smoke, I'm going to make it gray, gray-whitish, something in there, I think. Not pure white, but not that. Okay, now I can put the filter on that. So I go that, effects, simulation, Mr. Mercury, right next to the particle worlds we talked about. Now Mr. Mercury does this. Now we haven't done anything with it yet, but it creates a series of blobs for us, which we can use to our advantage and how to get things going here. So like the particle effect, all the tools over here are very, very similar to what we already saw. So I want to create a radius of 0, x, and y. That's my garden hose, remember that whole thing? So now you can see it's just coming straight down. I also want to set the velocity down to 0, which gets a nice stream. It's not coming out the camera. And also I'm going to do a really interesting thing here. I'm going to go down to gravity and also set it to 0. So it's just making a ball at this point. That's okay. So far, so good. All right. So what we want to do is we want to have what they call the producer, i.e. remember the producer from the particle effect. This is where the garden hose is, right there. We want to have it coming out of this ship. So what I want to do is go back to 0, 0, 0, create a keyframe in our producer, come down to rocket ship, open up my position, and then hit the letter U for both of these things. Okay, if you recall, we had a situation where we can use an expression to tie these things together. Remember with the magnifying glass we were talking about a while back? So what I want to do is alt-click this producer, the stopwatch on it, and it opens that up. And I want to say, grab the little pick whip and say, okay, this producer, I want it to follow exactly the position. So I tie those two things together. And very nicely, it says, take this layer and tie it to the position. So I don't even have to know any computer code. It's doing it for me. Click my mouse. Let's see how that looks. Jenna, I did not. I actually made the path, the motion path, so the rocket ship just follows along with it. There's no parenting. That is just the motion path that goes. So if you were to go key for position, you can see that things are tied together. Anyhow, so there we go. I've got some smoke, but then again, what's wrong with that smoke? Well, it actually doesn't sort of look right. So what we want to do is play with the, because smoke should start big here and get trail off. It shouldn't get wider necessarily. So let's fiddle with that. So I'm going to go to the birth rate. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Going to go down to the longevity. I'm going to go down to birth size, make it a little bit bigger, trail it off. There we go. So we go plop, 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 plop. Not bad. And then I can also play with it. For example, Yeah, again, play with the velocity will break it up a little bit, like so. I can also go into the lighting and shading. And I think I'm going to drop the ambient lighting so I can get some edges on there. There we go. Maybe 90%. There we go. That's not too bad. See how that looks. Whee! Our little rocket ship is flying across the space. It's a simple little effect, but can you see how by putting it together step by step, I made the animation, then added the filter, and then tied the portion of the filters, the producer, where it's coming out, to automatically follow, be part of the ship. It's using the same keyframes. And you can play with it more. But that's a cute way of doing, smoke and things like that. It's very cartoony looking, but it's right for that rocket ship. And I did include the rocket ship into the green screen folder, by the way, if you guys wanted to play that with that. And that's basically all I had for that. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a little step by step, but again, I wanted to show how to merge things together. Okay. Questions? And I'm sorry, I've not written a handout for that. It's one of those on my to-do list. I just haven't gotten around to it. But it is a blast to do, simple little things like this. But you can see how much I'm letting the computer do the work for me. Okay. No questions on that? It was pretty straightforward. Okay. One other oddball one I do want to show, which is another, the composition. This is a very different looking thing what I'm about to suggest. Okay, so we're going to start with a solid on this one. We're going to make basically the sort of thing you see at the beginning of opening news, those lines dancing around or atoms going around a circle or something like that. So for this one, I am going to want 100% black solid. Okay. And from that, I'm going to create a circle about the size of the comp. Now I'm going to want to center this. I'm going to hit the little action title safe zone so I can grab the whole mask and get it more or less centered up here. Now you got to be careful because you might make it too big, too small. Okay, so that's about right. It's close to the edge, but that's okay. Now, one of the interesting things about masks is that we can actually put filters onto masks. So what we want, I'm going to grab a effects, generate, and there's a weird one down here called Vegas. Okay. Now, the filter is technically on the solid, but zooming in, I have the advantage also is I can tell it to put it onto the mask itself. Okay. So now I have the path is marked as mask 1 in case I had more than one mask going on here. So from that gives me, and I'm going to really make a really wide thing here so you guys can actually see it on the screen. Now, Vegas doesn't have any pre-built animations. It does not do anything by itself. You've got to do all the work with it, but it does do a very nice line thing. So I'm going to take this and drop this down to one segment. There's only one dot on the screen. And I'm going to change the length down. So I'm going to make it like 30% of the screen. Whoop, it didn't go down. 0.30. Excuse me, 0.30. Can't type. Okay. So now you can see I've sort of started this, and I can change the color, of course. Make that white. Okay. And what I also want to do here is you'll notice that I can choose the rotation. So I'm going to go back to the very beginning, set, it starts at 0, and I'm going to go over the 10 seconds, and I'm going to say rotate, let's say 5 times. Let's try that. Well, what did I do there? I wanted it to be -5 because I want it counterclockwise. Negative is always counterclockwise, people. Let's try that again. There we go. We got ourselves a really kind of nifty little atom. Now, can we take this a step further? Sure. Now we can duplicate this. No, I did not say open that, so we're going to say close that, there we go. I wanted to actually rename this. Duplicate that. And by duplicating it, I can then come back in here and say make the link shorter. Almost make it like a little ball. I'm going to also make the width even bigger. And I'm going to make it a little bit less hard. Play with the opacity a little bit. So I get a little glow at the front between those two layers. But notice, for example, I don't get all the information. Actually, I'll come back to that in just a second. And I could duplicate this a few more times to give me different looks and feels for this and stuff. But say I like that. I could then pre-comp that. Pre-comp. Okay, and then that way I got that. And I could then duplicate that, make it 3D, play with the rotation. And the mistake was all of them were chosen. Now the problem I'm going to run into is this. I'm going to hide the transparency. Let's go ahead and rotate a few more of them though. There we go. Is this black solid? These are all solid against each other. So literally the comps themselves are killing each other in the sense that they're cutting each other off from visibility. So what's the solution to this? This goes back to actually an old Photoshop thing, is with various modes. Remember how you get things to blend together? Well, if you remember, and I did have a handout on this, by the way, you guys looked it over, but if we were to choose boy, this is where it'd be a good pop quiz. Actually, I can't even see what I'm doing here. Sorry. Okay, so we want to go in. We want to choose screen. By choosing screen, it bleeds out the black, 100% black. So the black is no longer The question that was just asked in the chat was a good one, is can you just put the effect on a shape layer with just a stroke and no fill? And the answer is yeah, that would work too. It would give you a different look though. But what I was trying to demonstrate with this particular thing is by using the screen, it allows us to mix these things together. Of course, I can also then duplicate the whole thing again. Rotate, I think I'll just choose. You know me, I'm starting to really put together a good atom here, you know, with a logo. Once I have that, of course, all set, you know, it's one of those things, pre-comp that, pre-comp. Okay. Make sure it's still 3D. Rasterize it, and as always I can just sit there and play with this. Scale it up, position, move it around. Heck, I could fly my camera through this. I could duplicate this. Yeah, notice how it slows down real fast once you do that. Move that back up. Actually, that one I probably even want to rotate it even more. I think more Z on that one. So they don't all look exactly the same and stuff. Now it gives you a really neat look and feel. I would sit there and then, of course, FX, net layer, new camera, 35mm camera, that works real well. Go ahead and go to views horizontal. Yeah, you can see how many. There's my camera. Let's go back to the beginning here. Stop that. Pull that one toward there. Pull that one over there. Grab this one. Push that one back. There's my camera. I always like the camera at the top of the timeline. There's no good reason for that, just like it. Position, point of interest. Go to the end. Let's see how it looks flying through this. As a matter of fact, I think, coming all the way back to the beginning, I'm going to pull farther back. And I'm going to really fly through the middle of this. I'm going to line these suckers up. All right, this is going to take a while to render, but let's see how that. But you can see the 3D-ness of this, can't you? You really get a good sense of development and stuff. And all I did was one filter on one mask, you know, but the real secret was to use the screen to allow me to make those layers transparent using screen and to go through there. Now this idea of these swirling lines, of course, you've probably seen this in like evening news and things like that where there's like swooshy lines going by. Exact same idea. You know, plus we could put other filters on top of these things. We could blur them. We could do, you know, it depends upon what you want it to look like. I mean, I can easily take, let's run one cup. Open that one up. Open up Oops, circle. There's my first circle. Okay. Select that, copy. Make a new comp real fast. Okay. Okay, so this was my starting point, of course. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to actually, reset the rotation here. Go to giant width. Make this a really hard line. Add a length to it, about there. Okay, so right now this is not moving at all, but I can play with the idea of playing with the position. Oops. And I wanted to keep it as a circle, so. I take that, keyframe it. Just go 5 seconds. Go across the screen. Okay. Back in the space. Okay, so this is going to be real simple. Once again, I wanted to go the other direction. Negative, Eric, not positive. -1. There we go. There we go. So we got that. We can put a glow on it. Low intensity. Yeah, cancel it. So you can see the glow moving really slowly, but that's intentional. So, stop opening that. Habits, bad habits, Eric. Blue. Let's duplicate this a couple times. 2, 3. Okay, top one, we're going to change the color to red. Okay. Next one, we're going to change the color to pink. Next one, we're going to change the color to purple. And then we're going to start sliding these over. Yeah, look at that render time though. This is where it comes into, you just got to play with it to get it, what you want it to look like. I'm thinking those evening news opening credits here. And I probably should have set the opacity for them to start before. I just hit Alt Home, so they all start at the same thing. So I hit letter T. I start keyframe that. Start at 0. I missed one, really. There we go. Go forward by 1 second. Fade it in 100%. There we go. No, don't do that. Now I can start sliding these things over. I want to do it a full or half, I think. Again, this is getting into way artistic stuff. You know, there's no right or wrong answer. But you can see what I'm shooting for here, this, you know, rainbow color. Thing. So maybe actually, that was right the first time. Put some more distance between them. You can see the trial and error I go through, just playing with it. And that's when it really starts cranking down, having issues. Let's see what it looks like when it's finished rendered. Yeah, the thing is they're popping up on top of each other. Maybe want to. The difference with screen, getting rid of the black. And the other thing about this is I might actually want to do this in reverse order. So the blue is always on top. There we go. Yeah, it's much better. And you can speed it up and do other kind of crazy things like that. But again, I just wanted to, you know, show the difference between, you know, doing atoms versus doing, you know, colored lines and stuff. How they all sort of come together. Here's the camera push. Actually, that's my favorite one because obviously we put more work into that one. So what do you guys think? Again, it's playing with the filters and starting to learn about them. I mean, as you've noticed, I've only touched a small fraction of the filters because there's just not enough time. I mean, we're down to coming up on our last 2 classes. I can only cover so much in this first few 16 weeks. But I want you to just start thinking differently of how putting things together. Understand that there isn't just one thing. There's no magic bullet. Yeah, do you have time to make changes to your final project? That is the problem with this class, is we always get a better idea after we learn more information. You know, we'll look back to our first projects and go, oh man, you know, we could do that so much faster and easier now because you know more. And again, that's all about you've learned how to do things in class and stuff. Now, I promised some time to talk to you guys about your projects if you want to. I hope that you enjoyed that, these little extra tidbits I'll, you know, give you here. I'll have them, of course, send you the Zoom link, and then I'll have them on my YouTube channel roughly at the same time, probably sometime tomorrow and stuff. Any questions on the 2 filters I showed you, my simple little spaceship or my Atommobile here? Okay. Well, this looks like a good time to stop the recording because I don't want to make a video of you guys asking questions. Not because I don't want to answer